All right, this time, let's see if we can get that one take. The date is the 9th. Here we go. Oh. It is time for the weekly Q&A that we call SplunkTalk. Episode number 72, recorded Wednesday, March 9th, 2016. Lowered expectations. Hey, we're back here with the live chat room with Clint, with Hal, and with yours truly, Waddle.
I gotta have more cowbell. SplunkTalk, finding answers without a doubt. SplunkTalk will help you figure it out. SplunkTalk, I can tell the whole world about SplunkTalk. SplunkTalk.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are. Hello, co-hosts.
Morning.
Who's on the line?
This is early. Are you cool with this, Clint? I know this is like dawn for you.
It is dawn. Thankfully, I commute with someone who's an early riser. He's turned me into a morning person. So.
Yeah, I see you got your coffee. It's good.
I have my coffee.
That is Clint Sharp, Splunker, and awesome product manager, a former customer, and
well, he's a product manager.
Lover of bows, hey?
Lover of bows.
And who else is on the
I'm here.
other end of the internet?
Al, I'm here.
Al, what's your deal?
Lover of Audio Technica.
Eh.
Yeah, they do the studio headphones. I got you.
Al Rotenberg, currently developer evangelist.
Currently.
Hashtag. Good. And the golden voice here, Michael Wild. It's a rainy Austin, Texas. I'm not barbecuing. And I have other things to say that are not about Docker for once.
So what are we
okay.
talking about today?
Hold on. What are we doing on Friday? What are we doing on Friday morning?
Is this a trick question?
No, what are we doing Friday evening? Sorry.
Oh, we're gonna be on This Week in Enterprise Tech.
Oh
yes.
Oh yeah. you like prep us a little bit. This Week in Enterprise Tech. Yeah.
Jeebus. Right.
With
Jeebus, Hal. Yeah.
twitlive.com.org, guys.
Yeah. Leo Laporte's crew. My friends, Robert Balliser, who we know as Padre, and Brian Shee, known as Cheebert, and there's another host, Kurt Franklin. I met all those guys at Interop. I don't know if you guys know what Interop is, but Splunk used to be a sponsor of the NOC. And we were in there, and it was actually Interop is a freaking awesome event. I mean, it has limited an audience. It's network and security focused, mostly network focused. But if you've never been to Interop, you don't know what the hell I'm talking about.
I have never been to Interop.
Okay, so here's the deal. When you go to a trade show, you often see many booths, and you go visit these booths, and the vendors show you their stuff, and it's awesome. But the network is behind the scenes. It's completely, hidden. Whereas at Interop, the network is the largest booth. The operations center is the largest booth. So it's maybe, 800 square feet. This sort of glass enclosed room, bunch of tables, lots of vendor gear. Here we go. Awesome. Great job with
robots.
delay. I know. We'll figure that out. But when you're a part of Interop and you're a sponsor in the Network Operations Center, you show up like a week in advance, and we start from an empty exhibit hall.
Mm-hmm.
We run the fiber into the building, run all the wiring from the NOC to every booth, test it out. There's a lot of interns and other people that just do that stuff. And then all of the vendors that provide technology, like firewalls and switching and VoIP, all that, they're there kind of demonstrating the whole point of that, there is no one solution to rule all, that, a real data center actually has a lot of things that interoperate together.
Oh, I get it.
Right. So it's really cool because it was like freaking nerd boot camp or like nerd summer camp, and
That is
it
cool.
was cool. Like spending
That
2 weeks.
sounds like a lot of fun. Although I do kind of feel like I've made the right career choice based off of one simple metric, which is days since last run a cable. And since that keeps going up and not dropping to zero, I feel like I'm winning.
Yeah, well, you could do interop and not running cable because there are cable running people for that.
Okay. As long as I don't have to run cable, because I used to sling that stuff through ceilings, man. There's nothing fun about running cable through an attic with a bunch of fiberglass.
Yeah, fortunately in this case it's just strung up overhead in a auditorium, right?
Okay. Well, that's a little bit more tolerable.
Yeah, and you actually, as a vendor, we don't sponsor it anymore at Splunk. We're not in the knock. I kind of wish we did, and maybe Padre and Chi can give us shit about that. But we just bring our stuff in, and then in our case, all the logs go to Splunk, and we do cool stuff with it. But you can, since it's not actually that much work for people at Splunk, we just set up our stuff and help. Actually, one of the things we did do, this is a way friggin' tangent, but we did use Splunk as the troubleshooting tool when vendors were having trouble solving problems
With
on
their home gear.
connectivity. Right. It was like,
Can I
Right.
tell you my Cisco Live story?
do.
Yes.
So Cisco Live does something similar to Interop to an extent. I don't know if it's to the scale. It sounds like Interop does a great job of making that kind of a centerpiece.
Better.
Cisco does have a knock that they highlight, and in past years, Splunk has definitely been a sponsor of that, and they would be splunking the network to help troubleshoot problems experienced during the show, and that of course is a great that's kind of a neat testimonial that we could use during the show, right? And there was one time that we said, hey, guys, can we have access to your Splunk dashboard so that we can show people at the show what it is that you're doing with it, kind of in real time. And they did so, and we had the dashboards on at one of the kiosks in our big booth. And the dashboard wasn't designed very well, such that it did a really expensive search when you first bring it up. It's like a asterisk all time kind of thing. I don't remember what the specific search was, but we're playing with this, and people reload this, and just normal things while doing demos. And then at some point a little bit later during the day, we get like somebody coming around to the booth from Cisco. Is like, I'm looking for IP address such and such. We think it's in your booth, and they find that it's one of our kiosks. It's like, we see a huge amount of bandwidth coming from this one kiosk. It took a while for the people to narrow it down, because they didn't realize that it was like a left hand, right hand talking to each other thing. They didn't know that that we had been given the Splunk dashboard, and they didn't know that the dashboard wasn't great, so they didn't know why the bandwidth allocation was like that. But it's like, so we were showing off this cool stuff, but at the same time we were kind of the problem, problem child and grabbing gigs of bandwidth because of that dashboard.
Like they needed to ask you about that?
Yeah.
Like they could have just used Splunk. Yeah. Interesting thing.
Bringing up the network reminds me that yesterday I sent out my semi-annual Splunk is not a network monitoring tool email to the broader company. It's always a special time of year when the question comes around and it says, "Hey, I have this customer and they have SolarWinds, PRTG, InfoVista." Insert SNMP monitoring tool here, and could we replace that? And it happens so frequently that I just stopped writing the email and just copying and pasting the one from 2 years. Actually, Hal sent it out on my behalf one time as well, I remember.
Good delegation.
Yeah.
But you're going to change that though, right?
So why is Splunk not a network management tool? You may as well go ahead and answer the question.
Yeah, I should go ahead and answer the question.
Could you just actually, Hal, just read his email. That way, yeah.
Just read the email. So I'm happy to share the email. I'll post it up on a paste bin. the general rule is we don't do metrics well, and networks are all about metrics. Besides the fact that, you know, the network hasn't really changed much in the last 15 years. And yes, I know SDN is coming. Maybe someday people will actually start using what all the vendors are talking about. I haven't seen it yet. Haven't found a lot of customers asking me about SDN, aside from the vendors who are pushing it. So for the most part, for those of you who are still running, you know, Cisco routers and switches, and for the most part, that stuff hasn't changed much in the last 15 years. So if you bought a tool 15 years ago, it probably still works. So we are.
Well, there's
So
certain
we don't
features
gather
and
SNMP.
expectations built into this set of tools that have been around for 15 years, like Discovery, for example.
Yep, discovery, gathering data from things like SNMP. We don't do scalable data collection well. We're working really hard on that one. That one's actually coming sooner than you would think, doing large amounts of polling. But we don't gather data from SNMP well. We don't have a defined experience. We don't do topology mapping. What's that?
We could. We have distributed forwarders everywhere. We could, but
we could. There's lots of things we could do, but we don't do, right? And so just don't do that. There's lots of things we do incredibly well. Stop trying to make us do things that we don't do well.
No.
All right.
Here's one last little thing on the interop, and you'll love this. So we had I don't remember which vendor was doing power management. I can't remember. Maybe it was APC or whatever. I don't remember, so I don't need to cite names. And one of the racks went down, like. And it shut the whole network down. It shut the outbound link to the network down. The the person managing at the time, his name was Glenn. He's freaking awesome. And the very first thing he did was pointed at us and said, "Splunk, what do you got?" Okay. So we do a search over the last n number of minutes, and we find that the engineer from the power management company logged into that particular rack, made some configuration change, and restarted the software that ran the power management and bounced the whole freaking network down. And literally, it was there was a summary execution that occurred as a result of that, but it was kind of cool for them to. We became the source of truth on what happened. Anyway, so Splunk Talk.
Yeah.
We're here. I also heard another good network story about a security scan. Speaking of power, a security scan gone awry where they were looking for SNMP vulnerabilities, and they found one in their whatever UPS they had. That every time they ran a security scan, it stripped the freaking UPS and the whole data center went down. I thought that was a fantastic story.
I remember that time that we had a hardware engineer go to decommission a SAN, like the whole SAN, and he went to the wrong cage, and he decommissioned the SAN that he found in that cage. That was like weeks of outage and summary executions.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Good times.
All right, we have some.
We should talk about Splunk.
Yeah, that's good. Well, everything is really about Splunk because we're talking. So.
Sure. Right.
All right. And
we are the voices of Splunk right now.
I agree. Completely agree. Okay. Did you want to go over some questions, or Hal?
Not really. Yeah. Well, yeah.
Right.
No, there were a couple of answers posts.
Question, Hal.
Earlier.
Hal, I have a question for you.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
What happened to the download page? Question mark. Okay, so hold on. This person really wants to know, where is the Splunk Forwarder older versions page? Because there have been some changes. So what do you have to say about that?
Well, They may have moved. I haven't figured out why or what exactly has gone wrong yet. But there is an answers post. This guy's looking for this. It's possible that some of these things have moved around because you can have access to the previous versions of the product, like Enterprise, for example, but the forwarders aren't on it. So some of the download URLs may have changed a little bit, and we'll have show notes, right? You can put a link in the show notes to the question.
Who's doing show notes?
I don't know. Are we doing those now?
This is lowered expectations here.
This is true.
Okay. We're not going to raise them in the middle of the show. Because that just gives Clint something to delegate you to do. So.
Well, actually my arm was getting a little itchy, and it made me realize that maybe I was allergic to commitment.
Don't tell your wife.
I'm certainly not going to commit to anything. But hopefully, watch for an answer to the question.
Okay.
We are aware of it, but that's the less important, less interesting rather thing.
It's just surprising that doesn't work. I'm trying it now to see.
Well, if you go to the Splunk download page on the right-hand side, at least it's actually bigger now. But it says older releases.
Splunk.com/download.
Yeah, they're there, but I think it was a forwarder issue.
The previous version of the forwarders specifically.
Ooh.
Oh, so that's interesting.
Yeah.
So the link to older releases doesn't take you to the forwarder.
Yeah.
So
I think you have to go to download and then go to the bottom.
No, it doesn't exist. No, that's a bug, man.
No, well, Universal Forwarder, free download. What happens there?
Yeah, but when you click on older releases, it takes you to only older releases of Splunk. You can't get older releases of the forwarder.
Yep, definitely confirmed. So we'll fix it.
So what's interesting is they are certainly there.
Yeah.
It is. This is a problem with the web page. You could actually probably back end your way into the URL if you wanted, if you were really dedicated. But maybe we'll just fix the web page instead.
Yeah, and people have been pasting a couple of direct download links onto this answers post and to help the people that are in.
Well, that's stupid. We shouldn't have done that.
Yeah. And you can only get back to 4.3.
Agreed.
And
stuff.
I'm going to find out if 2.2 is somewhere stored online. Because
2.2?
Yeah, it's cool.
Was that a banner version of the software? I don't.
What does banner mean?
I don't know.
Other than the educational system.
2.2 specifically that you brought it up.
Because 2.2 was really one of the first customer-ready versions of Splunk.
Oh, okay.
And I think we had forwarding. We used to call it Splunk to Splunk. But it's stripped down. It looks a lot like the features that exist in competitive products that are open source. But it's kind of cool because you can see it's life before the pipe, which is kind of cool. So sometimes trying older versions of software is fun.
Yeah, I mean by fun you mean like you like reminiscing about.
I'm gonna make a Docker build of Splunk 2.2. Yes. Got my Docker mention in this 5-minute period.
Hold on, I did have one other thing I wanted to talk about though. I don't have a question on
kids watching Windows 95 boot up. You see that video?
I didn't click on it. That was not interesting to me. Was it?
You will disappoint you. You will be very disappointed.
Excellent.
Okay.
So there was a question to me personally in email, and the question was custom alert action. So the modular alerting feature, which shipped in 6.3, I think. It shipped in 6.3. This is the ability to write a script and have Splunk. It's like a better way of doing scripts that answer actions, and you can do a lot of cool stuff with it. You can give them a UI and all that. The question was, with a custom alert action, how can I get access to all of the events that a given search would was triggered by? And they were using the webhook feature because we ship a custom alert action webhook that basically whenever this alert is triggered, Splunk will basically do a post against that particular URL that you specify, and that the server on the other end can do whatever it does. but they wanted to have access to the individual events instead of just the first one, because by default you have access to all of the fields and all the data in that first event. But there might have been 300 events that were kind of bundled up in that alert. So the answer to the question is you can either change the alert action configuration such that it fires on every single event, which might or might not be what you want to do, right? I mean,
Right.
that could be an expensive or inefficient proposition, or if you've got this thing scheduled to only run occasionally, it might not make sense. But another option would be to you're going to have to do some scripting. You have to update the script, but there's a payload passed to that script in a bit of magic that happens, and
Right.
it's basically you've got a link directly to the results file. So there's if you're not familiar with but in var run Splunk, under the search ID, there's going to be results.csv.gzip, and a link to that, or the file system path to that is passed to the script. So
Oh, cool.
you might have to do the work of unarchiving it and parsing that CSV, but that data is available. So that was.
Did that person explain why they wanted the events?
Not yet. This was something that was passed to me from the SE for that account or something.
Okay.
So I don't have the full discussion.
Don't go asking questions like why they want it. It's a requirement.
Well,
Just do it.
yeah, right. You said from the SE in the account. The SEs are supposed to ask why you want to do that. Like, just saying. Yeah.
Just making
Yes,
things
yeah.
complicated.
I don't know. Yes. Thank you. May I have another? Something like that.
All right, that's all I had.
That's all you have. Okay. What do you got, Clint? You're on the hook. You're literally on the hook.
Is that the opposite of being off the chain?
Yeah, that's pretty much.
Actually, it sort of is.
Okay.
But Clint, you had a couple of things that you'd mentioned you wanted to talk about today. Is that where we are in the show?
We can be there. Yeah, we can be there.
We can be there. Well, so the
Lowered
first thing,
expectations.
these lowered expectations. So these aren't specifically Splunk related, but I do follow the news, and sometimes I even Twitter them. I realize that the verb is tweet, but I refuse to say that. I Twitter things because it just sounds cooler. Secondly, so one of the things I Twittered was OMG SQL Server on Linux. Like, I seriously feel like maybe hell hath frozen over.
This was huge news. It was all over the social medias, definitely. Yeah, so Microsoft porting SQL Server, one of their flagship products forever, over to run on Linux. That's kind of crazy. Why do you think they did it? I have my ideas.
Azure.
Yeah.
So they want. I mean, the analysis was wrong in general. I felt like I saw several blog posts that were like, well, they're not going to attract enterprise developers on Linux because anybody who was already into it would have already just run it on Windows, and nobody really cares that much about saving the server license. That's not the point. SQL Server is the underpinning of Azure's SQL as a service. And so if you want to build this on your machine and developers are trending towards Linux VMs and everything else in their development environments, then SQL Server needs to be on Linux. And they're not going to run it on Linux and Azure, but if you develop for T-SQL, which, by the way, I prefer far more over PL/SQL. If you've ever done Oracle development, PL/SQL is an abysmally awful language, and T-SQL is actually, I find, it's based off of Sybase. I see people talking to the channel. I find T-SQL to be very, very reasonable, and I always thought that SQL Server was the best, most affordable database on the market, and the main downside was you had to run it on Windows.
So yeah, I think it's all about the kind of the economics of that as well. Is that if the business isn't even running, managing the operating system, all they care about is the application, layer, and if that application is running, we need SQL Server for this or this or this, then yeah, it's how best can we solve that problem, in terms of the cost, in terms of the performance also, but course, it remains to be seen what performance may look like.
Well, and you need to be a part of the entire conversation. Like the cloud hugely runs on Linux, and if your software doesn't run there, you just miss part of the being, a development choice.
Well, so that more than anything signaled to me the shift at Microsoft, and there's some thing, we've got some we've got a partnership with Microsoft. I've actually enjoyed working with them over the last several years, and even more so in the last year or two. And that says to me, Microsoft is SQL Server was the thing that sold the platform.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, let's be honest. I mean, like, how many Windows servers are there out there? I mean, it's probably a good third or more of the workloads are just SQL Server.
Well, they have three
Right.
and a half apps. They have Active Directory, they have Exchange,
Yep,
and then
and
they
SQL
have
Server.
and then there's the other one.
When Exchange starts running on Linux, that's really when hell has frozen over, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's features in the operating system that only exist because the Exchange team needed them.
Yeah.
I'm saying goes for SQL Server as well, but
So I thought that was incredibly epic, and actually makes me, before I came to Splunk, I spent a good portion of my career writing SQL queries. I mean, that's why I'm a search language dude, because that was always I always liked working with data. And there's still things that exist in SQL that, derived tables. I wish we had derived tables. Love derived tables. That's like the being able to join to another query is just like you can just keep layering them like stack upon stack. SQL has a lot of capabilities that we don't, but we have a ton that they don't. Like if you could have had stream stats in SQL, oh my God, what I could have done, right?
Right.
So I mean, it's just different paradigms, but tabular data is actually something that we talk about a lot in the halls of Splunk.
Right.
What are we going to do about tabular data?
Well, and we're good at it too. It's good.
we're good at tabular data.
We're good at, as long as it's in CSV, then we're great.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a big one.
Yeah, I thought
All right,
that was just really, really massive.
Let's move on.
The other one that I know Wild Red was the and not to spend every episode talking about Docker, but I thought the lessons from Borg was a particularly awesome paper as well.
I did not finish reading that. I started to read it, but
it is long. I highly recommend reading it.
Yeah.
Just drop the link in the chat room. Hopefully, people will finish that article in the next minute so they can follow along.
Yeah, so that's really, like, if you're looking at I think the sort of broader ecosystem and where like things like Swarm and even things like Mesos has solved a lot of these problems too, but the delta between Kubernetes and Swarm is primarily in a lot of the stuff that's in that paper, and those are all learnings from what it takes to run this sort of stuff at scale.
Well, let's set this up even more. This is a paper written by folks at Google who have
Right.
gone through this process of managing containers at scale for not just for the last year or two that we all have been talking about containers, but for the last decade.
Yeah. That reminds me of another interesting point, which is and something we talk about a lot is that some people say sort of open source is eating the world, and it certainly is, to a large extent, right? But I think people don't give enough credit to companies like Splunk, Oracle, and even and Google reminds me is sort of behind the scenes. Is like how much commercial software is there out there that is light years ahead of what's going on in the open source world? Because remembering that for the most part, a lot of these guys are either donating their time or they're being backed, but they're still significantly smaller in scale. Don't count out commercial software yet. I think.
Yeah. I mean, you still have teams of thousands upon thousands. At a company like Microsoft or Oracle, that's much bigger than our own. Of teams of developers that are working in concert.
Well, you look at why open source. Most of the really good things that we like to adopt that are open source are platformy type things, right? That we build on top of. They're products that become companies, like you have a
Red
product
Hat.
that, yeah, that's an example, right? Or point products that kind of become companies. I mean, even Mesos became a company, which is what, Mesosphere?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's Mesosphere.
Yeah, I mean,
We're all fans of open source technologies.
yeah. When you have well, I guess, right, Cassandra became
Data
Data
stacks.
Stacks, and Kafka became Confluent. Yeah. I mean,
But I mean,
when they
it's a
go,
rough business though, man. I mean,
oh
like
yeah,
it took Red Hat 20 years to get to $1 billion.
ew. Ew. That's
I mean, their growth rate's like maybe an 8 or 10% CAGR at best, right? I mean, that's a slow that's a slow growth rate, and selling support's not a good business model. You end up having to do the cloud era thing where you end up building some commercial stuff that sits on top of it. Chef's starting to do that now. They've got some commercial offerings that they're starting to offer alongside their open source offerings. So ultimately, like the open source stuff, and I think you see the same thing with Docker. I mean, eventually that
yeah,
they're going to have to do the same thing. Eventually, you have to become a proprietary software company because it turns out giving away all your software for free just doesn't make a whole lot of money.
yeah. It does. You have to feed people, right? Right. Yeah. I mean, Matthew in the chat room says many companies would rather buy commercial, so they have someone to blame or bitch at, and that's part of it. I mean, if you're going to put open source software in production, you either have to become the domain expert and the person supporting it, or find a company that's going to do that. Because either when you leave or if you need help, there's got to be somebody to call. I mean, that's partially why we bought Docker, but there's two proprietary products that come with their subscription that you can't get for free. And like, seriously, that's cool, but having someone to bitch at when things don't work is helpful instead of just ending up in a forum and being at the bottom of the list.
Well, I think ultimately the model of having whether you start with an open source product or not, but having an open source project and then building additional value on top of
Yeah.
it that is premium, I think that's the best of all possible combinations, really.
Yeah, like our buddy Will over at LucidWorks, they got that going on.
Well, and in the monitoring space, I mean, things like Nagios are pretty ubiquitous, right? I mean, you find Nagios pretty much everywhere you go, but I don't know anybody who particularly loves it, right? They just happen to use it because it's free. And I'll tell you, I'd much rather use one of the commercial offerings in that same space. The user experience is better, et cetera, right? I mean, like you end up with Nagios because it was the thing you could get without talking to anyone.
Yeah.
Right. No PO needed, basically.
Yeah, I have this problem, and my boss tells me we have no money, so I get Nagios.
Been there, man.
When you leave, who cares, right?
It's a problem for somebody else.
There's somebody
No,
else.
so I mean, like, actually, even worse than Nagios. You guys ever seen Big Brother?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That is the ugliest piece of software that has ever been written by any human being ever.
Yeah. Didn't it become a company? I think so.
Oh yeah, they did. Yeah, but it is awful software.
Wait, no, it got bought by Quest. Yeah.
You know what we need to do with ModViz? I just thought of a good idea. You remember SmokePing?
No.
No.
Do you guys don't remember SmokePing?
No. Is that
SmokePing is awesome. It's a simple little tool, and all it does is it just go to like Google image search, and you can see what it looks like. You can see what the visualization is, and it just pings stuff, and then gives you basically like a histogramish look of the distribution of values that in the ping.
Cool. Like Pingdom or whatever.
I see.
You're gonna put that in the product, right?
No, I don't do UI stuff. I'll find somebody else to do it for me.
Okay. Speaking of not UI stuff, my favorite thing lately is reminding people that we have a CLI, or as I like to call it, a TUI. And, earlier, Hal, you were talking about that sales engineer that gave you a question, and of course, he didn't ask why the customer wanted to do it. But I think a lot of the newer sales engineers at Splunk, newer customers, do not even know you can use Splunk to a great extent at the CLI. So I posted a little demo. I found 2 products actually. Have you guys seen Do It Live?
No.
No.
Okay, so Do It Live allows you to record all the commands in a shell. So let's say you're going to do a demo of something like, I don't know, how to install Splunk and get it running on Ubuntu, right? And you wanted to show somebody that. It'll record all of the commands in a shell script. Then you could just play it back, right? Which is cool. It doesn't record the output. And then there's ASCII Cinema, ASCII, A-S-C.
I've never seen that before. It was so awesome.
Oh, ASCII, yeah. So ASCII, right. Right, so I can't say that without sounding like porn. But then again, we work in Splunk, okay? And there's probably a frequently asked questions on how the hell you pronounce that. You know what? Anyways.
What's Clint's handle?
Yeah. I need to get the Bump soundbar gun. So that thing records all of your command line actions, but it records almost character by character what shows up on the screen, and then lets you publish it to a website and play it back. So what I think I'm going to do is record use Do It Live to record the whole thing, and then have ASCII Cinema run it and Do It Live and have ASCII Cinema record it, because editing in that thing sucks. But I made one of the Splunk user interface at the command line, so a lot of people know you can do things like Splunk Add Monitor and Splunk Restart and I don't know, Splunk list forward server, right?
You went borked.
I know, I hear it. Okay. But they might think you can run Splunk search, but they don't do it very often. They don't know. Most people probably don't know you can run real-time search. REPL is awesome, by the way. We need to make REPL better. They might not know you can pipe to stats and make a table, and they probably don't know you can make spark lines from the TUI or the CLI, whatever you want to call it. And I posted that on Twitter, and it's in the good old chat room. But I think the best multi-touch interface that was ever built is the keyboard. And having to switch back and forth if you are a terminal person to a browser to do all this stuff, it's like tying one hand and 3 fingers behind your back. And, we need to make that better. I think people should bitch at us more. We should have a fully interactive TUI where you don't need the browser for many things. So that's just my thing. But check it out. Use the CLI TUI more often, and your life will be better. Right.
And check out GitHub /Splunk REPL, REPL.
Yeah, and then
I have long dreamed of actually. Did anybody use Loggly before they did the reboot? So back like 4 years ago, Loggly version 1. They had
I work at Splunk.
I use all the products
called Splunk.
I used to run competition for us, right? So I had to use everything. So the cool thing about Loggly was they had, so rather than sort of Splunk where like I type in a search and I get a UI and then here comes a list of events, it was more like a web command line. And so it was a scrolling, you typed at the bottom and then it scrolled up. It was more like grep or tail or whatever else. And I have long dreamed of a UI for Splunk that felt more like grep or tail, right? Like where I just want to work on one source. I just want to like tail one source. I want to grep one source, and I'm actually looking at just events. Like I'm working in a workflow. I actually want to hit that use case where a developer would have been using grep or tail, and instead, like they don't want to use it because they're better. It's a better fit for your workflow, right? You're working on a file. You're not working on all the events Splunk has ever seen.
Right. You should really actually be able to pipe into Splunk. Right, like tail minus F, pipe it to Splunk, and then have the access to the full functionality, even if that tail thing just goes into memory and it's gone and maybe never indexed. I mean, there's a lot we actually could do at the command line that we don't.
Why don't we do that? Why can't I just go onto a server and pipe to a simple command line that dumps data into Splunk and then pipe greps it back or whatever? That's a good idea.
Crickets.
That would be easy to build.
Right. Well, it wouldn't be too hard, yes. But then if we're going to go do that, it would be really great if it got more usable. When I was doing this little demo, I forgot to try highlight. I don't know if highlight works at the command line. If it did, that would be great. Most people don't know about a search command called highlight.
I don't know about the search command called.
I mean, I could hear what happened.
Well, you know,
I can hear what happens,
probably...
and it's like, okay, here we go. Thank you, Internet. But most people don't know about highlight, and I don't know if it still works at the UI, but if you pipe it to highlight, it'll highlight a word.
I got a whole bag of just for you.
Yeah. Is it gone?
It is gone. Yeah.
Highlight's gone?
No, it's there. I don't know if it still works. I don't know. Let me see.
Try it. Pull up a Docker container of Splunk and try it.
I did that yesterday.
You
we
did?
will be sponsoring DockerCon, by the way.
Awesome.
Didn't we say that?
And we'll see you there.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. Doesn't matter.
Good,
Yeah.
good. So I think we should probably wrap for folks that have to go.
Well, we're doing a podcast, so they can go at any point in time and then listen to it later. But
I think Clint has to go.
One of the hosts has to leave for other work.
Yeah, to actually build the stuff that we thought about on the podcast.
Exactly.
Right.
So, all right, awesome. Anyways,
Wait to Glenn. He's watching the stream now.
Oh boy!
Oh,
now
nice.
that we're leaving, wave to Glenn.
Glenn, we totally talked about Splunk REPL.
No,
Nice.
no, we didn't really talk about it. We just posted it.
We just mentioned it and put it in the chat room.
Hey, oh Hal.
No, I'm not making show notes.
No, not show notes. Could we do demos? Like, I wonder, would that work here? Can I?
What do
guess
you mean?
I can share-
Like sharing screen?
Yeah, I guess we could do that too. Not today, but
I mean, we
it
could
might-
wrap for the terms of the, for the purposes of the audio podcast. But
Oh,
you
yeah.
can hit the share button, screen button if you want.
Oh yeah. So if we were, yeah, right. We'll talk about that later. But yeah, that would be kind of cool.
Maybe we do that at the end. Like we wrap an audio section and do it. Anyway, we'll brainstorm it later.
I'll decide that later.
Let's let our audience go.
All right. Anyways,
Let's let Clint go.
Let all 5 of the people listening go.
Okay. Suggestions, feedback, ideas, whatever. Email SplunkTalk@splunk.com. The chat room. It's right there, but we're not manning it all day. So send email if you got any ideas, questions, show things, or you want to bitch about my robot voice. Anyways,
I do.
from Hal, Clint, and me, Wild. Have an awesome week and happy splunking.
All right. Does that mean I hit the stop button or what? Or would you say goodbye, Clint?
I don't care what you hit.
Okay.
You can leave this thing. You can leave the bang out going. I mean.
Hey guys, I gotta hit the can. Be back.
Well, all right. I have to go do work. So
you probably want to stop the recording, whatever YouTube does.
I wasn't gonna take it with me.
Okay.
Anyway.
Why not?
Yeah,
Squatty
we should
potty?
probably stop anyway.
All right.
All right.
All right. I'll see you guys later.
Good day, sir.
Good day.